Good morning. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by United legend Paul Parker to talk over a mixed week at United, to be fair. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your questions and comments in. If you're watching the replay, say hello. Feel free to comment. We do reply. And if you're listening back on the audio podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening on. So I think we'll start with the league form this weekend, this week, Paul. Instead of because obviously we'll knit Sevilla into the preview for it as well. Before we get into that, how have you been? How was your weekend?
I'm fine, thank you. I was at Spurs v Bournemouth, which, if you're a Spurs fan, it was horrific. If you're a Bournemouth fan, you're ecstatic, and they should be, to be honest, really, because they're decent. They're a good side. They're a decent footballing side on Gary O'Neill. I think they've surprised a lot of people in the manner in which they're doing it. And they're not playing panic, get out of trouble football. They're still trying to play football, but very, very progressive. And we've seen them. They've had a few good results and performances up against some bigger teams as such. So I wasn't surprised that they competed against Spurs. And to be honest, I'm not surprised that they actually beat Spurs after what Brighton done to Spurs. And then I'm watching Bournemouth and I'm watching the way they moved. And Spurs at the moment are kind of a smaller version of Manchester United at this moment in time. Issues with the people at the top and
Yeah,
big issues on the pitch. I mean, their issue is really their fans are just blaming everything on Levy at this moment in time because of the way the team's playing. Even when they win games, it's been ugly.
yeah. It's very weird times for Spurs, but I think we say that every 18 months or so.
Mm.
Probably even more frequently than that. Morning, Ben. Hope you're doing well, mate. Yeah, very eventful, but a result that Spurs Stadium that really, really did United a favour, as well as Newcastle dropping points on Saturday as well against Aston Villa. So United needed to pull a result out of the bag, and they did it, winning 2-0 at Nottingham Forest. Goals through Anthony and Dallo. A really strong afternoon for United, really, on a weekend where they really needed to pull it out of the bag. Um, it was a funny one, Paul, really, because it looked like a nervy start at 0-0. United were playing well in attack, but they looked quite vulnerable in defence, and Forest were trying to expose Maguire. They looked like they were going to do it because they got the yellow card on Maguire very early on, and he looked very shaky. I mean, in fairness, he did settle down, but I've got to say, I thought we were extremely lucky in not giving a penalty away. But then, United need that goal, and they get it. Martial, funnily enough, does well to win the ball. He gets a shot off. Anthony scores from the rebound. United scored. Well, they scored again, but they created so many chances, and you thought they would have scored again much earlier. Not until Anthony plays Dallo in, we get the second. So yeah, it ends up being a really solid win. One I would say probably routine in the fact that Forest offered little after we went in front, but we were over the last couple of weeks, especially after Liverpool and Newcastle, we've been questioning or leaving open to question the mentality of the players. So to get the win on the board, especially after the rough, we'll talk about Sevilla in a moment, but considering the number of injury problems we had and the way that the Sevilla game ended, it felt like, is this going to be one of those moments where the team falls back on itself? We've questioned their mentality in the past, so to get the win on the board, Paul, was quite important.
It was, and quite a few people have said this, but I'm definitely one of them as well. Did say I was seriously disappointed with Nottingham Forest. I was expecting a lot more from Forest, especially as a factor of they would have themselves, I'm sure, Steve Cooper would have been looking, the big changes with United, going almost back to what we can call those moody days with that back four. Everyone I think was worried about it. They except for the first 10, 15 minutes, they never showed any fight. They were just home was their strength for
Yeah,
Nottingham Forest. It's been their strength. They've lost 4 games at home all season, and that was their major strength. Away from home, they've been pitiful. And what they've done is they brought their away form home, and
yeah,
it was just so weak, lacklustre. They got in the final third. They never had nothing in there at all. Um, I think we have to look at Gibbs White was very, very disappointing. Everything. I mean, their main player is the local boy, Worrell, and he got dropped. He got left out. So yeah, it was disappointing. But at the end of the day, you have to beat what's in front of you. And if you're Manchester United and you're playing against Nottingham Forest, people don't want to see you edge over. They want you to beat them well. And to be honest, the only thing wrong with Manchester United's performance yesterday really was the fact of they didn't do themselves justice with the scoreline.
Hmm.
It should have been bigger. Should have been more emphatic than what it was. And that you go and do that, you send out a message that you're missing key players, but you've got players who have come in who want to prove a point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're quite right, and I felt like some of the chances, and they were good chances as well. You could say Navas had a good game, but I did pose the theory last week that with Casemiro and Fernandes, Casemiro and Eriksen back, it could theoretically liberate the forwards if we had those players in the midfield, that we shouldn't miss Rashford so much. And I felt really, apart from not scoring as many, I don't think that we did miss Rashford. Don't get me wrong. Sorry, I rephrase that. We miss Rashford because when he's not there and not scoring. But we coped without him. We created enough against Sevilla. We created enough yesterday to really put that game to bed. I thought Fernandes was brilliant, as you would expect he would be against that standard of opponent. Once you've liberated that midfield somewhat, and you've got Casemiro.
Just one issue with him. He had one block tackle, which he lost out on to I forgot the centre half. Atletico Madrid, ex-Atletico Madrid, the big star. I've forgotten his name. I should know it, but he had one block tackle, and he didn't win the block tackle, and then he wants to have a big argument about it. Point his finger at the player. And that was his one moment where he let himself down. To be perfectly honest, it was a block tackle. The lad won the block tackle, and he wants to put his finger in his face as if he's attacked him with a knife. But sorry, Wayne, I stopped you. He was flowing.
Yeah, no, and I thought apart from that, I thought he played really well. Ben said story of our season, not really enough goals, but especially with the amount of space in midfield, Wayne. Bruno was always dangerous when he had the time. Yeah, and he was yesterday, created a lot. He did really well, but really sort of benefiting from that foundation that Casemiro and Eriksen had. And the big challenge was, could Forest make some kind of statement between the lines, between Casemiro and Maguire and Lindelof? But I thought Maguire settled down. I thought Lindelof played really well, but I thought I thought Dalot played exceptional, considering that he was asked to play at left back. That Wan-Bissaka played really well. So when you've got strong and confident performers around him, it helps a player settle down. I don't want to get too much on Maguire because people will talk about the penalty incident, and we've certainly talked about Maguire enough. The fact is, he came in, we kept a clean sheet, and we won the game. You're always going to get rough periods in games, but I want to talk about the positives, because you did have Eriksen, who was a late call-up as well because of the fact that Sabitzer was injured. Eriksen was absolutely magnificent. We've talked about who was the bigger miss, and when you see someone like Eriksen come in and just play like that and keep that midfield ticking over, the things that most people take for granted, because I remember in the sort of 3 or 4 weeks before Eriksen was out injured, people were sort of saying that he'd had a dip in form, and I think we called it straight away and said, well, you're going to see what you're missing when he's not there. So when you see him come back and he plays the way that he did, all right, we shouldn't have left it as long as we did to put the game to bed. But Paul, I mean, creating as much as we did, that's a really positive sign at this point in the season.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think I did last time we chatted. I did say sometimes you find that if you're reliant on one striker, it kind of hinders a team in a certain way, and you don't go out and maybe make enough chances because you always look dependent on that one person who's going to go and do something for you. And I think we've seen that there was, United haven't created that many opportunities again with a Marcus Rashford there. They haven't gone and done that. Fernandes has come out and made more opportunities and was more in the game as a focal point.
Yeah.
As well. His game was better, maybe because of that. And the team suddenly, people seem to take things on. I look at Anthony. That may be one of his best 90 minutes.
Yeah.
When you look at it as he was consistently in the game, and you look at his he was a threat. He actually seriously looked like a threat. He didn't seem like someone you think you just go near. You know, normally we see these performances and you just shake your head, but it was more. We saw more end product with him. I mean, you look at the goal he made as well. Yes, he was being pushed away from goal. Dallo doesn't make that run. He could have been virtually on going out to the other touchline. But to make something happen, people have to kind of try to. You have to work hard. You have to move. And he kept running with the ball, and Dallo's just made a run off, and it just looked. It was maybe one that run across, and it's a straight ball with an angled run. And Andrei Kanchelskis used to do that all the time, all
Yeah,
day long. Just make those runs. And be honest, the run made the pass. Great movement. And there could have been more of that. But for me, I think Anthony gave his best 90 minutes. Yes, he scored a goal, but everyone can score goals, and it papers over cracks. But he didn't need the goal, Anthony, for me to say that that's
yeah.
one of his best 90 minutes I've seen.
I'm glad that you said that about Anthony because a lot of people are, quite right. Let's talk about Fernandes playing well and talk about Ericsson playing well and the performances from the fullbacks, which I thought were exceptional. But yeah, Anthony's had a lot of it this week of, especially being taken off against Sevilla, questions about, his ability to sort of lose his head or keep his head, I should say. So for him to sort of come out with a statement performance, yes, again, Nottingham Forest, all that sort of stuff. But you're quite right. And the thing about Anthony that you've seen, good or bad, is that he doesn't go missing. I mean, Sancho,
Yeah.
he can go missing. Anthony doesn't do that. And if he doesn't do that, then you know you've got to play with the right attitude, at least in some respects, to play for a club like United. Because if they don't shrink, if they're brave enough to ask for the ball, that's a massive, massive tick in their sort of mental capacity to handle playing for the club. And yeah, he was very good yesterday. And a lot of people have, and I've been joking about it as well, the sort of running, cutting in and shooting with the left. But I mean, the thing is, he does it and they can't stop him. So if he gets the accuracy right, and he's still only young, you would imagine that he's going to do that. If they can't stop him doing it and his accuracy gets better, then, United have got a significant weapon on their hands. And I think it was a big question for him. So one of the things that I said last week when we talked about it is the players. Some of these players are going to need to step up. And okay, Sancho maybe hasn't, but Fernandes and Anthony Fernandes you would expect him to, but Anthony certainly has. And again, when you're talking about the sort of last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, for Anthony to flourish could be really pivotal in the way that United's chances are going to be. Right?
Yeah, that's right. What is the main thing is though he's gone and done that. The hardest thing now is to go and do it again. And I
Yeah.
think if you play for Manchester United, you play for a side who wants to achieve something. Consistency is so important. People will come out and say, "Well, it was only Nottingham Forest; they're poor." It doesn't make any difference. You still have to be there. You have to be in the right mindset. Now we've got to look for him to go and get somewhere near to that on Thursday, and then he's got to go and do it again, and maybe a bit better than what he done before against Brighton at the weekend
Yeah.
as well. So that's what the issue is. As well as they done, they've got to go and replicate that on Thursday in a completely different style game, completely different, and then try and then go at themselves playing at Wembley, which I still find strange that they're playing semi-finals there. But go and do that at Wembley against maybe one of the best and most consistent sides in the Premier League for performances, Brighton.
Yeah.
Which is a seriously tough semi-final when you're missing, your two key centre halves. To be
Yeah.
perfectly honest, the way Brighton play.
Yeah, we'll get on to those games in a moment. And so Ben says about Anthony was making some very striker runs in behind. I thought that helped the team a lot. And yeah, I think there's a point Gary Neville made in commentary on Sky, actually, and it was actually a fair point that United were creating the kind of chances that City normally create, putting the ball across the byline, and you would expect,
Mm.
and Anthony gets in position to score. The kind of goals that you would always see Sterling score, that kind of thing. United were creating a lot of those chances. Anthony gets in to score one. And you would have wanted Sancho to be a little bit more aggressive in trying to be there, because there were a couple of moments where possibly he could have attacked with a little bit more oomph. But, he's in the team. He's we're going to see if he improves. It's another big game for him at the week on Thursday, and we'll talk about that. I mean, in fact, and I guess you want to make a point on Sancho there. I can see that you sort of chopped
Yeah,
at the
I was working yesterday with my commentator was Kevin Hatchard, who's like a German expert.
Yeah,
He does that a lot. A lot of German with talk sport. He sits on Sky as well and does a lot of work on European football. But he knows the German league inside out, and he's a big Sancho fan. But he says the thing about it, they signed Sancho, and when he played for Dortmund, the system was fitted around him.
yeah,
He goes, now he's got everyone's expecting what they would expect at Manchester United to see a dynamic, wide player. You know, but he goes, he's not one of those players who's like that. Everything around him is with the ball, playing in, getting it back, and we saw that a few times. He was making those runs and behind. There was one moment at the end where he's played the ball and he's made that run. It was there for the pass. He never got the ball back, and
yeah,
that's what he does. I personally thought he was. I saw more of him in that game than what I've seen of him all the rest. He was prominent in that game, really, really prominent, and he was up against the tenacious Nico Williams, who was trying to make a mark. You know, playing there, and he's playing really well, but he's having to go as a Liverpool player as well in his own mindset. He wanted to to make sure that he had a real go and stop United getting something from that game. But he was up against a very, very competitive fullback, and he worked him. And he done well when he was making runs. He never got the ball back. So but it's just about him or maybe United trying to work. And it'd be interesting if he could get brought more into the game. If he's playing with Luke Shaw, Luke Shaw's doing a lot on his own bombing forward. Sometimes he's taken a lot away from Sancho, and I think it's just about him playing with somebody who's going to work with him. I
yeah,
thought Dallo worked with him.
yeah,
That was the difference. Dallo, yes, he scored that goal, and that was a great run, but he wasn't consistently doing it, and people suddenly reading a situation and knowing his runs, and he thought about his runs. He made different. He did different things all the time to make players guess. Luke Shaw just consistently runs in straight lines, and I
yeah,
think he suffocates the space that Sancho wants to play in all the time. So
yeah,
that might be be interesting because now I really want to go and have a look and watch Sancho to see how he played for Dortmund. I can remember him playing, but I wasn't scrutinising him at all. I was just watching Dortmund play as such. But I would really like to see how he played and how he integrated with the fullback.
yeah. That's interesting. I suppose that's another thing. If you sat with someone who has watched him a lot,
Mm.
then it does give you a different appreciation of what he's actually doing. So that's really interesting. So yeah, United yesterday, because of the fact that Dallo played fullback and Sancho's right-footed, everything was in the middle. I didn't mind that because Forest for some reason didn't plan for it properly, and it helped. I think they even tried to play a little bit wider than I would have expected, and because of that, United had so much joy in those kind of areas. It was a bit strange. Ben says Rashford used to do that as well, trying to play through players too much. He sometimes still does. If you watch him, his dribbling style, he's trying to get there like through players. But
It's not dribbling with Rashford. He doesn't dribble. He just tries to bulldoze, and if it comes off, everyone says fantastic. If it doesn't come off, then maybe like me when I'm watching, they've got their head in their hands because
yeah,
it just looks terrible,
and
absolutely terrible.
sometimes it comes down to the confidence of the players as well. I mean, when they're not. I mean, last 12, 15, 18 months ago when Rashford was low on confidence, it was not great to watch. But sometimes, I mean, there have been a couple of times this season. I remember it was at Liverpool at home where he danced through like 3 or 4 players and then it hit a shot that would have been the goal of the season if it had come off. But yeah, I think dribbling styles have changed so much this time in this era where players are expected to sort of move quickly through like 3 or 4 players, whereas I remember dribbling at speed, lunging tackles, all that sort of stuff. It's tighter because teams play more compact. All right, let's talk about Sevilla. So started so well. Sabitzer scores 2 goals, and then it fell away. So many injuries. You could consider that some of the incidents that happened in the game, particularly the second half, could have been avoided. The subs came a little bit early, perhaps, even though Ten Hag came out and said, the referee had made sort of warnings that Anthony and Fernandes could get sent off. less culpable for the fact you can't do anything about the fact that Varane and Martinez got injured. I did find it funny that people were crediting Sevilla with good gamesmanship or good sportsmanship, I would say. I would call it gamesmanship because the fullback was absolutely pitiful, rolling around all the time. And then as soon as they see Martinez, they know that United are going to be down to 10 men for 10 minutes, and they're quick to carry him off because it gives United a vulnerable backline to get at, and so it proved they score 2 goals and get a draw. When I thought, and I don't think United were brilliant. I thought that they kind of shot themselves in the foot by not taking those chances. Anthony hits the bar 3-on, and then Vegos fails to sort of put that chance away. He lays it back for Malacia, who obviously is not a natural finisher in that position. They had 2 big opportunities to make it 3-0, and from there, Sevilla, who basically created nothing apart from 1 chance at half time, then sort of threw everything forward and get a 2-2 draw out of it. It leaves us in this position where the 2 centre-halves are going to be out for probably the rest of the season. Fernandes is going to be suspended. Big question mark over Luke Shaw, but you would hope that if United are going to be proactive away from home, that Shaw will play at that left centre-half with Lindelof at least, to push up a little bit. I don't know, Paul. I mean, you can look at it and think it was a calamity the last sort of 15 minutes. I don't know if I'm being a little bit too naive or maybe too optimistic to create about our ability to create without Fernandes and probably Rashford still out, especially if Sabitza's out as well. But it's because I didn't see much of Sevilla that made me that unduly concerned. That I think with 11 players, we've still got a good chance to get a result there.
I think they won in the end. They were playing Valencia, and I saw there was 1-0 up away to Valencia yesterday. So I don't know if they actually finished off winning that game. But we have to remember there's a different mentality in Europe regarding, these competitions, these European competitions. The boss has always said never sit back and relax until after the game is done when you play in Europe.
They won 2-0, by the way, yesterday.
Yeah. That's virtually was his whole thing about Europe. He goes, he believed that when you play in Europe, you cannot take your foot off the gas because you never know what's around the corner, regardless of who you're up against. And that was proven. And obviously, there's this not so good record against Sevilla as well. But that game, when you play, it will be, you can't judge them off their league form. Go in there with a weakened team, and it is going to be seriously tough. It is going to be tough. You'll find out about certain players. But what happened midweek, I was sitting almost in this spot on Thursday, and then when I saw the substitution at half time, I turned around and I said to my boy, I said, going to be a big problem here. And he said, why? And I kind of said, going to sit too deep. Going to sit too deep and going to allow an average team to have a lot of the ball. And that was the problem. And not that they were great, but it doesn't matter who they are. If you allow them a lot of the ball and you allow them to keep knocking balls into the box, it becomes a problem. Especially if you haven't got control of the ball in midfield, that when you get it, and straight away you're taking advantage of that space that you've been given for them, for what they're trying to do. But you're allowing them onto you. You've got to be able to then have control of the ball to go and take liberties going the other way. In other words, you're up against a desperate team trying to get in the game. You take advantage by counter-attacking against them when they do it. And obviously, Fernandes was gone, Anthony was gone, and there was nothing really there. So they kept constantly coming up. And it doesn't matter how good you are or what great players you got. You just need that. You need one mistake, or you need an incredible bit of luck, which they got with the second goal, and that says it all. And that's the position you put yourself in when you do that. And to be honest, it was quite notable yesterday as well how deep United was sitting. It's just how lucky that they're playing against a Nottingham Forest side who are not very good, who are very poor up front, have not scored enough goals. So they got away in that sense. That made the job easier. But against Sevilla, they didn't get away with it by sitting deep. So as you just mentioned there, when you talked about what you would like to see at back four,
Yeah.
I'll be no different, and everybody should be exactly the same as well. Because the last thing you can do, and United's strength has been one of their greatest strength has been the two centre halves, because they want to squeeze up higher. They get the ball and they pass it through. I was watching Lindelof. Every time he's come and played, his performance has been really good because no one talks about him when he plays.
Yeah.
He's a captain of his country, and you watch him play for his national team. He's actually a little bit of a leader, by the way. And I didn't,
Yeah.
and then I saw him yesterday, and I could see him yesterday. Every time he got the ball or Harry Maguire got the ball, he was swinging his arm, telling him, push on, with him that he wanted him to squeeze up, and he. And that says something to me. That says even he knows that he wants to push up when he's got the ball. He wanted the ball to be moved quicker as well. And that's why I agree with you that he should play. If Luke Shaw is able to play, Luke should be on the left and he should be on the right.
Yeah.
Because he actually, in that whole game, he never put a foot wrong. He
Yeah.
doesn't give people EBGBs every time he's got the ball or he's up against somebody. He matches people. He gets something in a way. He makes it difficult. He doesn't give people confidence when they play up against him. But for some reason, he got given that title over 2 seasons ago, a couple of seasons, where everyone was blaming him for everything. He was the one. He was the problem when he's never really been a problem. He's been a model pro for Manchester United from what he's been through, especially this season when he's hardly played and
Yeah.
when he should have been playing.
Yeah. I think his reaction in adversity, in being second choice, I think has been magnificent this season. I did have a lingering question mark over him with his ability to come up against strong players. Sometimes he gets bullied a bit too much, but like I think what he's responded really well to is the fact that there's obviously a defensive strategy, and that strategy is to push up. And because he knows he's part of that strategy, he can work within it. Whereas I think maybe without knowing, and this is me without knowing, maybe they had some kind of communal agreement in the defence that you play to your strengths, and Maguire's strengths were sitting deeper and thinking that you can be comfortable heading everything out. Whereas, like you said earlier, that is all good and fine, but it invites pressure, and that's unfortunately what cost us against Sevilla. Before we talk about Brighton, Ben says he's got a question for you, Paul. He says, "Is this bad habit of getting complacent mid-game when things are going well something that the team can change from within, or will it take new players?"
I would say I think it was that's how it was, to be honest. Really, was that initially when it started with Ten Hag after the Brighton and the Brentford game. I think you saw there was a lot of that in that sense of the way the players weren't being complacent; they were being very thorough in everything they'd done. But then it creeps in again, just like before the League Cup, and then more definitely after the League Cup, their performances and levels dropped. So that's about, in my opinion, that's about some of the old school getting back into their habits, which they can't shake it off. It's inbred in them in this moment in time, and bad habits. Are they going to lose it while they're Manchester United players? And I think everyone can see that. When you look at United's strengths, you know where they are, you know where it's coming from. It's the injection of the new blood that has made the difference. Now got a bit of the new blood back in midfield now. When you talk about you look what he's got now. Ten Hag, he's got Casemiro back, he's got Eriksen back. So Bitzer should have been starting, but obviously got injured during the warm up. Whatever went on there, but he's got those three in there. So if he could get Sabitzer back for Thursday, if not have him there available to the end of the season, because you don't know with Eriksen, you don't want to, you know that you can't. You got to be careful with him in what the time he was out, but he can't come and play too much too quickly. Otherwise, he's going to get compensation injury, muscle injuries. So you've got to be careful with that. So I think those players, and if you can get maybe Varane back in that back line, and maybe a Luke Shaw back in a better mental state than what he was before he got injured, then there's a really positive chance that United will succeed in getting getting that Champions League spot all sorted out. Should have been sorted out by now, to be perfectly honest, but they hit that patch just prior to the League Cup and definitely after, which cost them dearly. I think just before that League Cup, I mean, at one point United were 4 points away from Manchester City.
Yeah,
When all of a sudden it went to 18. And that
yeah,
tells you how much they dropped off and how Manchester City have just stepped on.
yeah.
Just stepped on as win, 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 goals, goals, goals.
The good thing is that the results around us at the moment are they're being good. And I think Newcastle play Spurs next week as well, so one of those teams is going to drop points again, at least. So United are, I wouldn't say that they've got a buffer, but they will have a buffer if they win the games in hand, and they've got some tricky away games coming up, but they've also got some quite good on paper home games. Not, I mean, Chelsea at home. Chelsea are sort of wanting the season to finish. You've got Wolves at home, which I think we've got Fulham at one point as well, maybe. So some good on paper fixtures, although every game is something to be taken by on its own merits at the moment, and that takes us to the semi-final this time next week, Paul. I really don't know what to expect. We could be out of two cups. We could be in one final. And in a semi-final in the other, we could be in both with the season prolonging. I really don't know what to expect. The thing is, what I will say is that if we're not in either of cup competitions by this time next week, then I would still not be catastrophizing, and depending on the way that we are eliminated, if that is to be the case, because of the fact that we've won a trophy, we are in this decent position in the league where you would expect, all being well, that United should navigate that fixture list quite well and finish in the top four. So anything else would be a bonus from this point, is what I'm trying to say. But Brighton, they've been so good. They've won again at the weekend with an incredible goal. They've just been so good since Potter moved on, and De Zerbi has been just incredible as a manager. They're in seventh. They've got multi-threat capacity throughout the team. They've got Mitoma, who I'm going to list players who I'd be quite happy to see at Old Trafford. Mitoma, Ferguson, Caicedo. They've got some, and they're just three. There's probably more. Three magnificent players who Caicedo's definitely bullied United in the past. They've been so good in the cup run as well. They battered Liverpool at home.
Twice.
Yeah. But in the cup, they took them apart. They really took them apart in the cup. So they're going to be up for it. A big, nice pitch to play on as well, which probably, I mean, if anything could be their undoing, it could be playing at Wembley in the semi-final and it being a bit bigger, that United could slow the game down a little bit. Wembley, notoriously not a pitch for wingers or wide play, but that means that United are going to have to get all the elements right, because the last couple of times we've played Brighton, albeit under Potter, we've had lessons, to be fair, back end of last season when the confidence was really low. To be fair, Brighton have usually ravaged us when we've been low on confidence. I can remember bad games under Solskjaer, under Mourinho. We've had big beatings off Brighton before. So I don't think anyone's going to be taking them for granted, which I suppose really is the best way that we can prepare for the game, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, one of the things is you're saying that is that United very rarely lose semi-finals, FA Cup semi-finals. In certain ways, well, definitely under Sir Alex. Anyway, there was always that bit not losing them when they got to semi-finals. And Brighton are just well, they are what they are. And you said it all. Said it all is that he's come in, the new manager De Zerbi, and I'm sure there was. Well, it's been public knowledge now. It's been brought out everywhere that a certain person said that De Zerbi wouldn't be good enough. No one, he doesn't know the league. All that stuff come out by somebody. And look at them. Brighton have shifted on. They were a good side under Graham Potter, but they're a better team now. They're a more progressive team. They're a little bit more aggressive. They're not soft. Certainly don't roll over anymore. They go behind after dominating games. You knew then that they would just practically give in. They don't give in anymore. They keep going and going and going. and their two performance against Liverpool this season says it all. When you see, I think he scored there. Trossard scored. Did he get a hat trick or was it a double he got there? Trossard early season at Anfield.
He got a hat trick, didn't he?
Yeah. Went, and then I saw him play the cup game at home as well. I mean, they've been absolutely amazing, Brighton. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of United fans who are worried about this semi-final. Really, really worried about it. City have definitely had the luck of the draw in certain ways in what they've got, and if you're Sheffield United, the last thing you wanted to see is the form that City are in at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Um, their big players have suddenly stepped on, which you'd expect if you're a club who wants to achieve things. You expect your big players to, step out the shadows and come and deliver, which they're doing now, and they've hung in there really. Because initially, after the once the season restarted, City never got going. They were really struggling to get over the line. So I still believe that still got that feeling that after the weekend, United will still be in two cup competitions. I've just got that
Really?
feeling. Yeah, I've just got that feeling they will be because they've just got to start right and be mentally right in Seville, I should say, in Seville, and they'll be fine if they start right. If you are Sevilla and you've watched that game at the weekend, you know exactly where you're gonna detail yourself. If a certain player's playing, you know what you're gonna do. You can harass him because you know that he will crack. And that is the one weakness I see that could be Manchester United's problem. If they if Harry Maguire is to play, Sevilla would see that and get up against him, knowing that he will panic and he would be more concerned about the player rather than the ball.
Yeah. I did feel I've got to say, like, we've talked about this before. I think we give fair criticism on the podcast to players. I do sometimes, well, I think we did it last season as well, draw the line at some point when it looks like players are suffering too much and you don't want to sort of add to that. And I put Maguire in that category, and I probably did at the back end of last season. You do sort of still, when he's played, you say whether he played well or give him criticism in the way that it's expected. And, yesterday I felt sorry for him for 25 minutes. I genuinely felt sorry for him because I thought that it looks quite out of his depth. And if Nottingham Forest are targeting you and thinking you're going to get joy, then that's, it's a grave concern. And
He was very, very lucky, Wayne, that they stopped doing it. I mean, it's just like it's so old fashioned. I think even a dog and duck who play in the pub league, if they saw a player like that against him and got an early yellow card, they'd have been running past him all day long. Keep running, keep trying to run beyond him because he'll try and keep blocking you off. They never done it. They didn't do it. And if you're Steve Cooper, you think to yourself, he's an intelligent man. His coaching ability, he's got everything. And you think to yourself, he must have said that. But the players, and it tells you the position he's in. His players are not absorbing it. They're not taking it in.
yeah,
Just by the way they played, they were so naive. And when you got someone like him, who's very, very studious in what he does, that tells me that there's big problems at Forest because they're not listening, not
yeah.
listening at all to him.
No, that's fair. But I will also, in criticising Maguire as I just did, I do want to say that, he did recover well. Still not to the extent that I would feel comfortable that we line up anywhere different than the way in which I just said for a big European away game. I really do think United's strength is going to be in taking this, but obviously it depends on the fitness of the players as well. Malacia, whether or not he'll be in is another thing. I mean, every fullback has been running to the ground. It looks like we've got Dallo. At least he played well at Forest, so he'll be confident enough if called upon to play in the left hand side on Thursday night. It's going to be another massive week. But I'll tell you what. Paul saying that he thinks we'll be in two cup competitions. That was going to be my last question. This time next week fills me with a little bit more optimism. I'm not quite as confident as that, but I'll take it from Paul, hopefully. And next week we will be talking about United having navigated two difficult ties in the cup, and looking forward to probably seeing the final because they are going to take apart Sheffield United, who I feel quite sorry. Probably got a few mates who are going down from Sheffield for that one. They're not going to be. Well, it's a long way to go to see a team play Man City at Wembley, as Watford found out a few years ago. At least make it competitive. We'll see. Anyway, we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for taking part today. If you've watched live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your comments in on the replays because we do reply. If you're listening back on the audio podcast as well, subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening on. Until next week, guys, stay safe, stay well. Thanks for listening and watching.